Good evening, one and all. Welcome to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. Of course, a show that is geared towards all things real estate in the Turks and Caicos Islands. It's always a pleasure to be in your home on a Thursday just to talk about real estate. Please like and share the page. And of course, I want to say a big thank you for all of you who continue to watch these podcasts Thursday after Thursday. And also, thank you for all of the contributions you've made in terms of giving me suggestions of what you would like to hear about because we all will benefit from it. I do have a guest in studio today, but before we get into that, I just would like to just say something really quick to everyone, just as a reminder. This is something that I have spoken about time after time on this podcast. But every time this situation comes up, I feel like it is important to reiterate it once again. We know that real estate is a household conversation these days in the Turks and Caicos Islands because of a lot of things that's happening on the real estate market. And I know that everyone is excited about finding reasonable properties within their price points to be able to tap into the real estate market. But I want to remind you two things. One, please, if you can, use a real estate agent. And two, if you don't want to use a real estate agent, please make sure you use an attorney. And I'm saying it like that. Basically, I want to say use a real estate agent and an attorney, but I'm saying to you one or the other because sometimes we get all type of reasons why you don't want to use a real estate or agent, and we've gone through that over and over. But I have found, and even most recently found, persons are continuously going to sellers of properties just to get the deal. And when you have already given a deposit or gotten into that, signed some agreement with that individual, you find out that there are a lot of issues with making that purchase. In one case, the person didn't have the right to sell. In another case, there were a lot of issues with the land titles that you were not able to understand and get sorted out. And the main thing is you had already invested into that parcel. So that's why I would encourage you. There's nothing that we can do for you as a real estate agent if you don't involve us in the process from the start, right? So there's nothing we can really do. All we can do now is, again, advise you to go and seek legal assistance. But that's why I'm saying to you again, use a real estate agent. This is our profession. We know what to look for, we know what to do, and we are here to help you. And if you still feel like you don't want to use an agent, at least hire an attorney so that they can look out for your best interests. Okay? I know I sound like a scorch racket, but I just feel like I needed to say that another time on this podcast today. And the last thing about it is, I feel that all attorneys in most cases, they are always inviting to have a conversation with you. But if you still feel that you don't know how to approach an attorney, there is the Legal Bar Association. They always have a free consultation, most times at the end of the month. Of course, you can send me a ping and I can get the schedule for you again. But this is an opportunity where they open their doors to consult with you, the general public, about any issues, not just relating to real estate, any issues, legal issues that you may have, and they can give you sound advice on how to move forward with it. So with that said, I don't want to delay anymore, but I hope that you get the message because I have your best interests at heart. With that said, I want to get into the segment for today, which is about pre-construction in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I have with me in studio, I'm always excited that I have someone with me in studio so that I'm not doing all of the talking, but then, we can share ideas about the subject matter at hand because knowledge is power, and being able to pull from here and there makes a big difference so that you and we all can be educated about the subject. Without any further delay, I would say welcome to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate, Mr. Sean O'Neill. Please introduce yourself to our listening audience.
Hi, Veronica. Thanks for having me. My name's Sean O'Neill. I'm the managing partner at the agency Turks and Caicos. I was born in Grand Turk, grew up in Provo, went to boarding school and university in Dublin, Ireland, before working in what I call the trifecta of dirty jobs, politics, law, and real estate. So I've been working in real estate for about 9 years, and then been full-time with the agency and into Korea for just over 5. So it's been a pretty chaotic time in the world from when I gave up practicing law in July 2019 and then COVID in 2020. But it's been exciting, and obviously, new development has been at the heart of that, the whole time while I've been working as a real estate broker. So I'm excited to talk to you about it.
Great. You've said that, of course, we know that you are a part of the Real Estate Association, and this is just on a side note. When you decided to come into real estate, as selling real estate, you don't have to be a part of the Real Estate Association, but did you feel like it was beneficial to be a part of the association, and why?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, it was the data. It's the information. We're very lucky that Turks and Caicos is one of a handful of jurisdictions in the Caribbean that use a multiple listing system like they have in the US and Canada. So we can see what properties are transacting at. We can start to look at trends. We can give advice to buyers and sellers in terms of what their expectations in the market should be. And so for me, having access to that information, and again, it leads directly into all the new development work. You have access to information, you're able to use it. And I think that was a big driver for me. I love marketing as well. That was a big part of what kind of helped me take the leap from attorney to real estate agent. And of course, I use a lot of the same skills every day anyway.
Yeah, well, that's good. Like when I started, I was talking about reasons why we should use a real estate agent, and just talking about being a part of TCI. I think that TCI gives us that extra power or boost to be able to service our customer in the most efficient and effective way. And I'm also glad that I am a part of Real Estate Association, and it just adds strength to us to be able to service our customers the way that they need to be serviced. And that's why I continue to tell people, trust us as real estate agents. We have the backing of a big association like the Turks and Caicos Real Estate Association that holds us accountable to make sure that we are accountable to give them the best service possible as well. So today we want to really talk about pre-construction in the Turks and Caicos Islands. I'm sure everyone, as they ride along the highways or even walk the streets, we can see a number of construction that is happening all over the island. And not just regular construction, but as you start thinking about it, I felt like we should give persons an idea of how just not building a regular home from start to finish, but the whole pre-construction process for people to be able to understand it. And when we say pre-construction, you can chime in if you want to, as it suggests pre means before. So building any real estate structure before the construction starts, and even before the construction is completed. I like to look at that because it can be in various ways. So that's what I would say to people if they ask me, what is pre-construction all about? Because we're using all of these real estate jargons here and there, but we need to make sure that everyone understands when we talk about pre-construction. If you want to share a little light about how do you explain to your customers what pre-construction is all about? Sure.
I mean, I think to me, the biggest thing is that the pre-construction process is one of partnership and trust. I say to my developers, clients, and to buyer customers that the buyer is trusting that the developer is going to deliver a product to the quality that they said they would and in the time frame they said they would, and the developer is trusting that the buyer is going to pay for it when they said they would. But I think that one of the most important things, I think, and one of the reasons why new development pre-construction is so important here in the Turks and Caicos, is that they form small financial partnerships between developers, contractors, and buyers. There's a very limited capital supply here, so there's not a huge amount of money to help finance. The banks are trying to get more into pre-construction financing, but that's a whole other podcast in and of itself that I'd gladly talk to you about. So when you look at whether Turks Island developers, other people who are constructing here, the ability to work with both people who are living here for homes, but really for foreign individuals who are coming in and buying property through new development, that's a partnership that they're injecting capital into the Turks and Caicos that's going to generate jobs for construction. For the most part, it's also going to generate jobs for the hospitality industry and everything else that services that along the way. So I think it's a really important part of our real estate community. And I think it's really interesting when you look at the history of how new development pre-construction has evolved over the years. We had the 2000s had the boom with a lot of the vertical condos that we have on the beach. That's Waimara, Seven Stars,
Right.
the Palms. And then obviously the global financial crisis hits. All of those go fairly quiet. The Shore Club being an anomaly in those early 2010s. But the luxury villa market took off. And so you can see looking around, it went from individual properties to communities. So you had the Shore Club, Waimara, Beach Enclave. And so we've seen this resurgence that kind of really drove the market and helped cement us as the luxury tourist destination in the Caribbean. And it's pre-construction partnerships that I think have really driven that along.
Right, I think I agree with you, and then I think that it has really evolved in a positive way from over the years to now, and it has helped to create that luxury brand that we continue to advertise in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I remember when I first started real estate, there were a number of pre-construction projects, but then it died down for a period of time where people were just doing a lot of resales for existing projects, doing resales, and we had enough inventory on the market at that time as well, in a way. But now we are seeing that the pre-construction has come back with full force, and there's a lot of pre-construction that is going on now in Turks and Caicos Islands. So let me ask you this. Of course, we all want to know. We've heard it before, but we need to hear it again. What are some of the advantages of buying pre-construction? And one of the things you've said already, and a few minutes ago, you were talking about the need for new development. I think sometimes we have a lot of the older type style homes that have been on the market for quite some time, and this new generation or this new breed of developers and clientele, they're looking for a new style product, something that's modern, contemporary, that probably was not in abundance at the time. And I think pre-construction gives us that opportunity to explore those new development and new style product ideas. But tell me, what are some of the advantages you would say that's come out of pre-construction?
Sure. So, I mean, if you look at the villa market, you have, obviously you get a brand new product, brand new property, which is great. You typically get warranties from your developer and contractor, which you wouldn't normally get on a resale. You have the ability to customize in some cases, not all cases, but there's a bit more room to allow for that. And then, of course, if you're in the villa market and you're buying pure pre-construction, you're entering into a land purchase agreement and a construction agreement, and you pay your stamp duty on the land acquisition. And I think that again goes back to my point about partnership. Like, some people, that can be a contentious topic to bring up, but I feel like it's really important that everyone recognizes that it's those micro injections of capital that are allowing the market to continue to develop. And again, that's creating jobs and it's creating opportunity for lots of other people. Obviously, you don't have that on the condo side. A condo, you don't take title until construction is completed, so you pay your stamp duty on the full amount at the other end. And obviously, all of these have the benefit of time. So you don't necessarily get the opportunity to use your property right away, but also means you don't have to pay for it all right away either. So you can pay in installments depending on what the development requires, and that payment schedule varies from property to property.
Right. I think the whole thing about the payment schedule, like you say, is so important, because we do have persons who buy into Turks and Caicos. It's their second home and not their first time home. So even though they may have cash to come in and buy, they still want to be able to not use all of their cash one time. And this allows them to do that and put as a payment plan option, where they can put some of their money down and invest their monies in other areas while they take their time and also get to the end result of the product. And I also think it's good for persons who may be looking for financing but they are not able to get financing right away from the banks, and just having the payment plan option that acts as their financial institution in order to fulfill their real estate transaction. So I think the payment plan option is really good when it comes to pre-construction. I also feel that one advantage it will be, I feel like you have already gotten an increase like on your investment right away when you buy pre-construction, because the price you're buying at, it's gonna actually increase in value when the product is finished. It's like it has already increased in value. So I think that's a big incentive for pre-construction as well, because like you say, all of the incentives the investor will give or the discounts that they will give on the product, it allows you to get into the market at a reasonable price in most cases, and then it's like you've already gained on your investment when the product is finished.
Yeah, you have to have faith in the project. You have to have faith in the team who are there. The reality is the majority of people can't see something they can't touch. They need to be in the property to feel the space. And so if you're someone who can see that or does have belief in the team that's putting it together, it does give you an advantage. Like an example being the Retreat, which is a new hotel resort project that we just launched in Grace Bay. We started with a very structured, tiered pricing system. That started at $375, and we're at $400,000 now. If we have one more sale, we're going to go to $425. We have a target then to go to $450.
Right.
So the people who bought in at the earliest stages are seeing increase in value,
exactly,
having only put down a small amount of money, and shovel not even having gone on the dirt yet.
Correct. Just a quick thing about how the payment plan works. Normally, can we just get like a typical payment plan structure that usually comes with pre-construction?
Sure. So, I mean, it varies from project to project, and it will differentiate between whether it's a villa and a condo as well. But typically you'd have your reservation bond, which would usually be a little bit higher than maybe what we'd see in a individual purchase, because there are a lot more documents typically to go through, especially the earlier in the process. And that's really more of kind of your good faith deposit. So in some cases that's held with an independent attorney, that might be held by your attorney, but it's just to make sure the purchaser is proceeding ahead. And then after that, you might have 10% payable on signing the agreement for sale. And then after that, it really varies from project to project. So in some cases, you might get to the property being watertight, and you'll have paid 50 or 60% of the payment if it's a condo. If it's a single family home or a villa, you obviously own the property. So one of the big differences there is that you can secure a mortgage or a charge against that. So you can then use that asset and the construction that's going on with a bank or another financial institution to help fund the purchase. So normally you would, it depends on what the developer's kind of position is in terms of what they have to make payments for. And then obviously in the midst of that, you may have a furniture package, you may not. It depends on whether you're part of a managed, condo or villa product versus a small cluster of 3 or 4 homes. So each of those kind of vary a little bit from project to project.
Right. I just want to pause just for a minute just to remind you that I am speaking with Sean O'Neill from the agency Turks and Caicos, and definitely if you do have a question, feel free to put it in the comment section. I'll be sure to ask those questions on your behalf as we speak about pre-construction in the Turks and Caicos Islands. I do see a question actually that's here, but before I ask the question, I want to ask you, we've spoken about the advantages, and I don't want to use the word disadvantages but what could be some of the setbacks when it comes to pre-construction? In everything you have, there's always a downfall somewhere that's possible to happen. What would you say are some of those things when it comes to pre-construction?
I mean, obviously you don't get to use the property right away.
I know.
So that's one of the big disadvantages I think people look at and they go, okay, I'm ready now. I want to go and enjoy this property, immediately. I think the other big one is dependent on who you go into partnership with, which is the same in every walk of life.
Right.
You want to make sure that you're working with a reputable developer who's got a good team. So sometimes the developer might not have as much experience in the development world as other people who are down here, but they've surrounded themselves with good property managers, a great construction team, and I think you can tell a lot from who a developer pulls together as their team, as to what confidence they have in the project. And also as well, we live in a small place, and reputations are very hard earned and very easily lost. So it's important to make sure that when you're thinking about who it is that you're partnering with this purchase, that they're someone who's committed to here for the long term. Because unfortunately, there have been people who've come through here over the years who've not done a great job.
Right.
And they're damaging to the reputation of all the developers here. But I'm very grateful that they're the exception rather than the rule.
Right. One thing you said, the first thing you said was it's taken a longer time before you get into the finished product. That is, I think, a disadvantage. But also, if you think about it, for some, not everyone else, some people are looking for a product and they can't find the product that's on the market. So they may have waited another year or two before they found the right fit anyway. So sometimes they would have had to wait anyway. So pre-construction for me in that case may not be a disadvantage, waiting for everyone would think that it is. So, and I guess it all depends on who's looking at it, but I know that's one of the main disadvantages people start to think about. But I have customers, we all have customers who come year after year looking for a product, and then they have to, probably 2 years later, we're still looking for a product for that person. Whereas if they had committed to a pre-construction product 2 years before, 2 years later, they would have actually been putting themselves into a finished product.
You raised an interesting comment earlier about how the properties that are here already and have been for a while, because I've been talking about this and writing about it a lot lately, because as homes and condos and everything else continue to be built, the people who had first choice of every piece of land on the island to go and build, they picked the best spots because they had the choice of everything. So we're at this really fascinating point, I think, in our architectural and our kind of construction history, where there are a lot of homes that, say the lifetime of a home is typically 30 to 35 years. So homes that were built around that time that have maybe, we have had significant improvements in air conditioning, in the way in which properties can be utilized, absorbing damage from things like hurricanes and stuff like that. So we're at this interesting point now where people who have homes that have been in place for a long time, and obviously they see the market rising, and then you have the new development properties being constructed next door, and how those two sectors of the market merge, I find really fascinating, because it differs from person to person. And obviously some homes you can retrofit to bring in the benefits that we now have, and in some cases you can grandfather in setbacks that you could never get again, today. So I think that's a really interesting kind of subset of that new development market that we're seeing start to evolve.
I agree with you. So I just want to read, I have 2 questions here that's on the feed. With developers being hesitant to make purchases in the outer islands, do you think that they should think more along the lines of pre-construction in order to ensure a successful product in an uncertain market?
So is that, that's new development in the outer islands?
You're right. Yeah, I think that's where it's coming from.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think the outer islands, are beautiful, and they're ripe for more development, but the right development. And I think that the interesting thing, like if you look at North Caicos as an example, right? I always look at North Caicos and I go, the population's about 1,500 people? Is it that even that much? It's very hard to. All the materials come through the port here. They then need, Lou has to bring them over to North Caicos. The cost of construction is, I think the last one someone quoted to me, it was somewhere in the region of 30% higher to build in North than it is in Provo. And Provo's already fairly high.
Right.
But I think one of the big challenges there is that the construction crew, a lot of the labor still goes back and forth from Provo to North, or to Parakeet or to Pine Key. I think that I've for a long time said a big project in North, whether it's Royal Reef, whether it's the St. Charles, whether it's the airport expansion, whatever that one is, that's going to be the mobilizing factor that brings other people to the island and now gives the critical mass that lets everybody else benefit from it. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. Like you can see, like Sail Rock and South Caicos they've just their own thing kind of going on there, and they obviously were able to that presence, them and Solterra, are now able to drive a direct flight into South Caicos, right? So I think that you do need some bigger, just in the way Provident were the people who developed Provo.
Right.
You know, you need a first mover to come in who is going to invest that, again, capital to be able to get things going, and then I think everybody else can benefit from that investment.
Right. One other thing, you know, and reading the question, I also thought about, you know, just from a pre-construction standpoint, like you said, there are all of these things that I feel also will drive more traffic into the islands and more people to invest. But from a pre-construction standpoint, it's not a bad idea in to bring developers in, because, for example, with pre-construction, in most cases, you're waiting until you have already sold so much of a percentage of the product, or depending on the style of how you do the construction, you're using the individual's money to actually do the building. So sometimes developers looking at it as if it's not a loss to them, and so it's a risk that they may be willing to take versus just building a complete, I'm just using an example, a complete condo development out of pocket with their own money and not knowing what the response is going to be from persons coming in without all of these things already in place. But pre-construction gives you, I think, a little bit more of a security where, because again, like I say, you're not spending any money until you get down payments and deposits, and then be able to use that money to start the construction.
I think, I mean, one piece of advice I tell all the developers I work with now is that there are great renderers out there. So it is significantly easier now to have pretty pictures to depict what a development is going to look like. And so as a result of that, there's more competition in the market for new development properties. You need to back yourself, and you need to start building, because again, that starts to speak to people who might have questions over confidence in the project in general, but also starts to let them see finished space. And I think that if you're going, you know, there are lots of people who own pieces of land and they can have an opportunity to put a package together. But if you're going to have the confidence of someone coming in and trusting you to do it, sometimes you have to back yourself first before someone else is going to believe in you. I
mean, you're correct. And then I remember, like I say a while back, well, just say with a number of, I wouldn't say failed products, but say the Royal Reef project, or even I think it was the Toscana before the Andes and whatever like that. I think it was a testament for some developers, like you say, to ensure that they have the complete funding and the backing, even though it is a pre-construction project, to give more confidence to the investor to say, hey, we have everything in place, and then we are able to go forward with this project, even if every unit isn't sold out, to make sure that the finished product is intact for those who do invest in the property. So that is a good point that you have made as well.
Yeah, confidence is key.
Yes.
Confidence and belief.
Yes. Another question is, can someone get a mortgage to buy real estate at pre-construction stage?
So the answer is yes and no. So if you're buying a single family home, so where you own the land that the property sits on, it is possible to get a mortgage, because the banks will have an asset to secure the loan against.
Exactly.
And the banks will all tell you that they're very eager to get more into that field. You know, that is something I would like to see a lot more activity in from the banks, if I'm being honest. I think that particularly the local market of people who live here are at a significant disadvantage, because the banks frankly aren't doing their job. They're not providing an adequate service, and they make it very, very difficult for people who live here to be able to access that capital to proceed. And so that is a real bugbear of mine right now, because I hear a lot of talk about eagerness to be out there and lending money, and obviously banks make money from lending money.
Yes.
But it is definitely a frustration of mine. But yeah, you can do that with homes. Sometimes the banks will say, look, you have to put up X percentage beforehand, and then we'll start chipping into it. If you're going to buy a condo or a townhome, which has got a part of a strata plan, unfortunately you don't get your register until the property is completed. So the bank won't give you any financing until you get to the end. Now, and that's why in some cases where developers can, they'll often look and say, okay, you put up the first 60% over various stages of construction. So when it comes time to make your final payment, you can borrow that from the bank to fund it. But again, that varies from project to project and the position the developers are in.
Yeah, you're correct in saying that, but I've seen probably one project that I know of personally where, like you say, in regard to the condos, you definitely can borrow on that because you don't have the strata titles that are registered until the end, and you don't have a vacant lot that you can put a charge against. But I've seen just one project where the company that was funding the developer, they decided to step in and offer like mortgages. They of course couldn't put a charge on the property right away, but just because they were the company that was funding the overall project, they allowed them to do some type of funding through them. So I mean, and that was a smaller project though. I can't say that every lending company will take such big risk for a bigger development, but I saw that happened once so far.
The commercial banks have indicated that they are willing to do that because obviously if they hold a primary charge on the property as it's being built and as it continues to go up, they do have that kind of security blanket that everything that's in there is still under their loan. But that shouldn't be very complicated. I haven't seen it in practice as much as I would like. But yeah, it's definitely an opportunity. So there's a great opportunity for people who want to be lenders down here because there's a very healthy real estate market and there's definitely people who are looking for continued access to capital.
Right. So you had, in talking about pre-construction before, we were talking about people wanting to see something that is tangible. How do you convince someone who that pre-construction may be the right option for them without being able to show them a tangible product?
So I think that's where the team that's involved becomes really important. So, if you're working with a developer who has constructed other properties before, you can go and see some of their developments, right? So Bruce McLaren at Waimara Villas, as he was constructing the villas, he could bring people to Waimara Resort and give them a sense of what the project was going to be like. Same thing with Mark Durliat and Grace Bay Club, Stan Hartling, the Hartling Group. If you have someone who is in the earlier stages of their development, then it may be the case that their contractor becomes more important because if they can go and see the completed works by the person who they're bringing in as a contractor, that gives confidence to them. We've seen that again. T Holdings is the contractor at the retreat.
Yes.
And we had one banana patch and one sailfish. One Venetian, one sailfish. First over on Venetian Road, and then followed a similar type of style to one Banana Patch and Banana Patch Estates in Long Bay, so that when people came to see the second series of homes, they already knew the quality of finish we had in the first place. And again, we've then evolved that into Lakeview Villas, which is looking at over Flamingo Lake on Hollover Road in Turtle Tail. But again, that just continues to build up the confidence. And we say to people who are looking to get into development, putting together that team is so important, because you are able to benefit from that experience, whether it's a North Star, a Projitech, Olympic, like these are names that people recognize. And if you say you're engaging one of these companies, then that gives confidence because people know the quality of craftsmanship and work that they do.
Right. And you had mentioned even earlier about the renderings. I think the renderings are very important in also convincing persons about the product that you have to put forward to them. And I think those renderings are able to give a fairly good idea because sometimes, in most cases, it looks like the finished product. There are maybe one or two things that may be different at the end of the day, but I think the architects are really good that they can give you a clear product of the finished product. And I think that helps a lot of people as well to have that visual aspect of what's coming.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about being involved in new development is, taking something from a concept idea to helping to plan it out, to figure out, not just like what's the best use for the property that this home or condo is going to sit on, but what's the user of the property going to want from it. And to work through that process and then go through the plans, the renders and everything else. Like it's really exciting to be a part of that, from start to finish. And then when you start seeing some of these properties kind of complete, it makes that is definitely one of the highlights of my job.
What would you say to someone, let me ask you this, for someone who may have started a pre-construction sale. At what point is that person able to pull out of that sale, and how does that process look like? Because we would all be concerned if, you know, a project is 2 years out or 3 years out and we've invested into it and we see it's not going to plan. At what stage are they able to pull out?
I think, I mean, like everything with the legal element to it, it kind of depends on the individual circumstances. But normally, you know, when you're in the reservation period, you know, that's when you and your, as you said, very important, your lawyers are going over the documents. And say lawyers, it's Turks and Caicos qualified lawyers, because we have people who come to us sometimes and they have amazing lawyers in New York and London and Toronto, but they're not qualified and they don't know how the law works here.
Right.
So they can't really give you advice. They can give you a second opinion, but we still obviously advise you look through the documents with an attorney here. But through that period, if you find something that you don't like that's in there, you know, some places won't let you have a pet, right? And that for some people that's a deal breaker.
Right.
So you decide to back out, you'll get your reservation deposit back then. Once you sign the agreement for sale and you are committed to the purchase, and the developer is also committed to you at that price, if you withdraw after that point, then it's down to whatever your contract says. And that, again, that varies. It's not necessarily that if you're 50% through, 60% through, and then you pull out, that you would lose everything that's there, because there are usually some legal protections for a buyer as well. But if you look at it from the shoes of the developer, okay, if you're not going to buy it, now they have to resell it, and there are costs, time, and everything else that kind of go into that. But yeah, like you said earlier, the earlier you get into the process, usually the better the price you're going to get. And so the developer has committed to you at that price for you to complete. So, so there's always a little bit of kind of back and forth, and the contractual language usually reflects that.
I like the word you used, resale. So basically, remember you were talking about the different ways of how pre-construction can happen in regards to if you just say are doing a villa and you have purchased the land outright to cut costs on stamp duty. Now you are in this, and then you have obviously moved into a pre-construction agreement at this time. So if you decide that you want to pull out of this project, then like you said, there is a possibility of reselling the parcel or the unit that you may have committed to. At this stage, is this something that where the developer will dictate the price, or is it something where you as the individual owner will dictate the pricing that this project is not completed?
So it depends, right? So every legal question starts with it depends. Most contracts will have rules against assignment. Like a developer doesn't want to sell you a unit at a great price. You're committed, he likes you to work with, and then you flip it out to somebody else who he doesn't like and becomes a problem. And obviously then at that stage, you're also, he's doing all this work to make things happen, and you've committed to it, and now you're just trying to flip back out. So there's usually rules relating to that. And same thing, if you have a construction agreement, my expectation would be if you're going to try and flip that out to somebody else, you're going to need your developer/contractor to consent to that as well. Because I had a customer of mine, it wasn't on it was on a different property he'd built, but the people came in and they said they wanted a very brightly painted backsplash in the kitchen, and he just looked at it and said, no, I'm going to give you the white one that I think looks amazing, and once you own it you can do with it whatever you want. But they were his immediate customers for the sale.
Right.
So I think that most of the time you'd have to go through whatever legal language is in it, and again it's a reiteration for why it's so important to have a lawyer go over it and explain to you this is what this term means. I was looking at some sales documents for a project today, and I looked at it and I had to read one paragraph 5 times to think I understood what it meant, and then email the person back and say, can you just explain what this means again? So I mean, for people who aren't reading these documents all the time or don't have any experience, so much more of it is intimidating. And it's always so important, if you have a question, if you don't know the answer to, or you don't understand something, to ask it early on. To make sure that you're comfortable with your purchase.
Right. Most real estate in Turks and Caicos is sold fully furnished. The majority of pre-construction, would you say, is sold with furniture? I know you have a furniture package. Well, I guess in most cases has a furniture package. How do you how do you answer a question about that? What comes with pre-construction? What are the basic amenities or items that becomes in a unit with a pre-construction project?
So my expectation would be that if you're buying into a managed development, so whether that's a condo development or villas, where you're particularly if you're part of a mandatory rental management program where they have a standard that they expect to meet, you're going to have a furniture package as part of it, and then that would usually be an additional cost to the cost of purchasing the property. If you're buying something that's being built that's not part of a program like that, oftentimes there won't be a furniture package. An appliance package is usually a standard. So you'll have your oven, your fridge, your dishwasher, your washing machine. But one of the things that I've found is that there are two things that are incredibly personal to people. One is their furniture and two is their landscaping. And so,
Landscaping.
yeah, so when developers are looking at what they're going to put in for those packages, you have people who come around and they have very particular taste. We had one woman at a property who was adamant that if she bought it, she did not want the white sofa that was in the furniture package. She wanted a burgundy sofa. And again, but it's also the same with landscaping, where some people have very ornate taste as to what it is they want. So a lot of times I would find in the non rental program properties, there'll be a base package of landscaping that's there that might have hedging and some palm trees and maybe some bougainvillea, but it won't be as exhaustive as what an individual person might do. And then of course it becomes important for whoever is the agent acting for the purchaser to also help make the introductions to landscape architects and landscapers so that they can put in things that really suit what they're looking for.
Yeah, I know people are a bit particular about the furniture package, but I've never realized they're the same about landscaping.
Landscape, because you can spend a lot of money on landscaping.
Yeah, I know that, but so much. Seeing that you're in like a community with so many other people, that something like that will really make a difference to one individual.
I'm great at killing any plant, so I'm not the person to speak to.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that.
But no, it's definitely something that I think people, and again, you have to kind of compartmentalize the different types of properties that we're looking at. And again, some people, but also if they're looking, going, look, this is my budget for what I can afford to buy now. And I said landscaping is expensive. I don't necessarily want to spend that amount of money now. I'll buy it, I'll move into the house, I'll save up some money, and then I'll figure out what my next step is going to be with that.
Right. So I want to ask this, and then afterwards I want you to just give us an idea about some of the pre-construction properties that you are working on as a team at the agency. But I remember a while back when you were speaking, you talked about one of the advantages of pre-construction is that you have some level of customization. This level of customization, I know, does it come with an additional cost, or that you would say, or does it all depend on at what stage you will bring this customization on for these units? Yeah,
it depends. It depends on what stage you come in. It depends on which project you're working with. For the most part, I would say most developers would say, look, they're not building bespoke homes. So if you want to have something that is truly unique to you, they could work with their contractor team and the architects on another property to be able to put something together that suits what you need. But if you're coming in at an early stage, there are tweaks that you can have. Like at Waimara Villas, you can see how phase by phase, even villa by villa, there are little tweaks that have been made. Some units have an office in the back. Some of them have a bunk room because they're, the families are coming down as large groups to come down and enjoy it, and they want to make sure that the four, young kids and tweens are all get all the bunk beds to sleep in together. I would say most developers want to limit their customization as best they can, and then in some cases they'll have basically a menu of additional items that you can put in. So if you want to have a garage, it's X amount to add it.
Right.
If you want to do, in Waimara Villas, if you want to add a slide, there's a price associated with that.
Right.
But I would say, in my experience, most of the developers are quite fair in terms of if you want to change something, they'll say, okay, if you're taking something away and adding something, well, what you were going to get cost X, so we'll deduct that, so you just pay the difference.
The difference.
Yeah. So let's say if you wanted a specific tile, and this is obviously before tiles were ordered and laid and stuff. that if you said you wanted that they would say, okay, the difference between that tile and that tile is whatever amount, and that's a change order. But again, that's also something where it's really important as you're noting it that it is memorialized. So there's no misunderstanding later on when a payment comes up and you say, well, I didn't realize I was going to have to pay more for that. And that unfortunately does happen from time to time.
Yeah, and like we said, it's good to get all of these customizations in as early as possible so that it wouldn't cost so much of an additional cost moving forward.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of these great pre-construction products that you have ongoing. I know one recently is the retreat that you've just listed here in Grace Bay, and you mentioned a little bit about it before. I'll probably have Daniel put up just one or two clips just to give people an idea of some of the renderings. Tell us a little bit about this product. One of the things that captured my eye when I saw it was the price point, because we're always looking for these, favorable price points. So tell me a little bit about the retreat.
I'm glad you noticed that, because I always say, right, there are three things that a buyer looks for, and it's price point, location, and imagery. And if you don't hit a buyer in all three of those things, you're going to lose their interest right away. So the retreat is a 24-unit condo resort located on Grace Bay Circle, just behind Grace Bay Club. They're all studio units. A number of the end units are designed in such a way as to allow them to lock out as 2 bedrooms. They're all 400 to 410 square feet. They're designed as investment properties. They're efficiently designed so that they will be utilized for rentals, provide good revenue. There's no restriction on owner usage, so owners can come down and use them as they please, obviously subject to availability and all the usual normal rules that apply in a resort. But I think that's a really exciting product. I think it's in a great location. We started, I said, at $375. We're just about to bump it to $425 when we get one more reservation in place. But I think that's something that, in terms of combining, location, price point, style, I think it's really kind of hit well within the market.
Yeah, I think it actually really went well for the market, because as soon as a lot of them came on the market, I noticed you changed the status to a lot of them. The price point was spot on. I do like the fact you talked about owners being able to use it. People come here and they want a vacation. Yes, investment is very important, but you do have persons also who just wants to have that opportunity to use their unit as much as they want. And I find that every developer and development has their own style. But I've had one or two customers recently is every product that they go to, because there's so much investment in terms of making a return oriented, it doesn't allow them and their families to use it as much as they want. So with this particular property, just usage, I think that's a really good plus. And of course, it's a smaller boutique resort. I think that also makes a difference. Sometimes we don't want to be in all the larger fanfare, and there's a market for a product like that, I think, in Turks and Caicos. And of course, like you said, the location is ideal. Yeah,
no, I've been really excited. When you spend a lot of time putting together the information packages and everything for it, and you're so deeply ingrained in it and really believe in the project. And then when you put it out to the market and everybody reacts to it the same way that you had hoped they would, is really exciting. So that's been, it's been a really interesting one. And also just to be peripheral to how the hospitality side of it works as well, because I've been kind of watching, and that's again the other part of new development. You have to love learning, because there's so many things you can pick up on along the way. And in this one, I've gotten to learn a lot about how the hospitality side works, which I found pretty interesting.
So what's the scheduled date for completion? What's the scheduled date probably for groundbreaking? What's the timeline for this project?
So the site's cleared as of the end of last week.
Great.
Formal groundbreaking the beginning of April 2025 with scheduled completion for the end of August 2026 to be ready to operate in season winter 2026. So it's pretty exciting.
What will be a reason for it's not a delayed groundbreaking, it's a scheduled groundbreaking. But what's the reason for a scheduled groundbreaking in April of next year?
Mobilization of the workforce. I mean, that again, the challenges that we mentioned earlier for North and Middle Caicos,
and that's why I asked that question.
Extend here too. So it just takes time to get those things ready. And of course, confidence. You want to make sure when you start, everything is lined up and all the different crews who do different jobs are all ready to go. So when you start, you finish.
Yes.
It may be that some of the additional work can be started before then, but I think that's the right timeline to direct people towards.
Right. I want to ask that because that just had put something in my mind, like you said. Sometimes with pre-construction, persons will be like, okay, why such a long time period? But there are so many things that are going on to get you to that time frame that people don't realize what work is being done. So for example, I know that there was one development where it was individual lots where they wanted to, it started as a pre-construction project where everyone would have had shared the land and not individual lots. Then the owner changed it where he wanted to give everyone individual lots so that they can tap into the stamp duty process and reduction on price. And because of that, in the time frame in which it took to process it through the entire system, the planning department, the land registry, etc., that had delayed the product a little bit. And I had one or two people were asking me, well, is this project not going to happen? And it's like sometimes when you don't understand how much work goes behind the scenes in getting it, that's why sometimes the product actually takes a longer period of time to get to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think so. I think in that example, the building permit's in place, everything is, from a administrative perspective is ready to go. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the people, everyone, the guys and girls working in the planning department, in the land survey department, and the land registry are worked off their feet.
Yes.
And there are so many things being thrown at them all the time, and they also have a very important role in how all of this is dealt with to make sure they get things right. And I think there's another new development project that I'm working on, Nava, which is up in Northwest Point.
Right.
And I was working on that for 3 years between initial engagement with the client to actually closing on the property. And again, that was going through subdivision applications and things through the land registry and land survey at a time when an ordinary subdivision would have taken you up to 9 months because land survey was so backlogged after COVID. So these projects take a long time, but you only get one chance to do it right.
Exactly, and you want to do it right.
Yeah.
You got to do it right. Yes.
And so that's where, and again, particularly for vertical construction, so if you're looking at condos, there's usually a minimum threshold of sales that a developer is going to say, okay, or I've reached a point where I'm feeling confident. Like we're one shy of 50% sold on the retreat already.
That's great.
And it's been like 2 weeks on the market.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so that, and we've had people who've come to us and said, we were offered the early pricing. Can we still get it? And we're like, no, sorry, like that wouldn't be fair to the people who we've sold.
Exactly.
The other ones too. But yeah, there's Maurizio Mansky, who's the founder of the agency, he loves to quote Napoleon, which is "Dress me slow, I'm in a hurry." So it's it's better off to take a moment to get it right than to rush and make a mistake.
Definitely. So tell me about the sanctuary. This has been another project of the agency for a while, and you can see where construction, of course, is started. You can see you're far ahead in the game of where it is. Tell me a little bit about that baby of you guys, the sanctuary.
The sanctuary is a beautiful project designed by Blee Halligan, sitting right in the lake, right on Flamingo Lake. We have two of the villas that are there. They're sold. They're under construction and almost completed, nearing time for delivery and insertion of the furniture there. When you're out on the side of the sanctuary, it's a peninsula that sits out into the middle of the lake, and you have the rolling hills of Turtle Tail that are in behind it. So you get this really unique vista compared to some of the other parts of the island. And you just go out there and it's just peaceful and quiet, and it's a really nice amalgamation of that tranquil kind of serenity that Flamingo Lake offers, but also being part of a community. Because I think after COVID, a lot of people have this gravitation towards community and the gravitation towards developments that provide amenities that go with them. The sanctuary is going to be managed by Grace Bay Resorts as part of their private villa collection. And then
again,
owners,
talking about important of knowing name, brand. I mean, that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's an important driver for people who are looking at it. But it is a different location for a development like that. So that's another example of why being able to get to completion on those first 2 villas, to be able to show people how immaculate the finish that Kerry and his team have done. And like every project on island, there have been some delays with it because materials have come in. They've not been exactly how we would have liked them, or dealing with backlogs in various different things. The sanctuary is very focused on environmental sustainability. And so one of the focuses there was to make sure that the woods and the materials that were being used in construction came from sustainable sources. So obviously Ipe has been a very popular hardwood used in a lot of developments here, but I understand it's not sustainable. So it takes so long to grow. So going and finding alternatives to be able to provide that same high level of finish that's better for the environment has been one of the driving factors of the developers there.
Yeah, I think you guys took a bold step in putting the sanctuary on Venetian Road, because before then, there are pre-construction and projects all over the island, but most times I think there's a preconception about where a development can be placed. And I think you guys really stepped out the box when you decided to put it there, because most of all, when you look around the Venetian Road area in Ontario, most of them are just like before the sanctuary, were just individual homes or villa that people did. By creating that whole community, I think you've really set the stage for other developers. And now you're seeing like you have additional products that have been placed out into that Venetian Road, Taylor area. So you could say that you're not limited to just want to be in Grace Bay or other locations. So I think you guys did a great job by stepping out of the box. And also I think the product of it being more environmentally, I can't say my words today, environmentally friendly, I think is a plus, because nowadays a lot of investors are looking for more eco-friendly places and more conscious of the environment. And so I think it aligns itself with the needs of the clients and what they are looking for. I think that's where we're going. I mean, most of real estate is going to now, because even in persons in their regular homes now, they are trying to find ways in which they can take their ordinary old-fashioned homes and make it a little bit more environmentally friendly. I think we've not done as much of that like we should have, in the earlier upbringings and construction of homes. But now this new modern development is trying to tap more into the being environmental friendly. I think that's a good plus.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that if you look at the evolution of construction here over the last 30 years, particularly post Hurricane Andrew in Miami, and how we've evolved into hurricane rated windows and doors being standards in certain segments of the planning code and things like that. My hope is that we're going to continue to see more of that into the future with the environmental sustainability element of it. And obviously government are trying to do their bit with legislation in respect of whether it's solar energy and things like that. My hope is that as that legislation evolves, it does strike a balance between ensuring safety for people who are putting in those individual solar packages and things like that, with the need to get as many people as possible to be able to do it in an affordable manner.
Right. So lastly, tell me about the project that you have coming up in Long Bay.
So that's Urban Villas. So Urban Villas is really exciting. That's by Edge Developments. It's going to be built by HO2 Construction and Paul Horton, who many people will be very familiar with. He just finished what is probably the most impressive commercial building in the Turks and Caicos, right there on Venetian Road, and which is actually a great building just to tour as an architectural nerd like I am.
I haven't been in it, but I'm excited to see what's in it.
So that's going to be a collection of 4 villas. It's a very different design and style to what you would see in other parts of the islands. And it's blended a more kind of urban feel to it. I love these floor-to-ceiling glass series of windows that go up by the staircase going upstairs. And it said, as Paul would say himself, it blends this combination of both urban design, but also this community of four villas set just back from Long Bay Beach and just around the corner from South Bank. So for me, it's the location there, and South Bank has now become, and as it will become even more as it's about to open, an anchor for the entire Long Bay community with restaurants, amenities. The marina is obviously already there, so I think that that's something that's going to allow us, with urban villas, to be able to provide something to people who maybe weren't in early on South Bank, but still want a product that is of equally as high a finish.
Yes.
In circumstances where they have that little bit of a community around them, but also the freedom to be able to rent themselves, Airbnb, VRBO, that maybe you wouldn't be able to in other kind of managed products. But no, it's different. It is a project where there's a luxe and a moody finish in the bathrooms and the kitchen, so you can go light or dark. So that kind of goes back to what you're talking about having some options if you buy early into it.
Right. So we're getting ready to wrap up. Just so you know, if you have any additional questions, this is your opportunity to put it in the comment section at this time. I just keep glaring down at my phone because I'm looking to see if anyone has any questions. But so we've talked about, as we wrap it up, we've talked about where pre-construction came from, how it has evolved over the years. We spoke about some of your current products that is in the market now in terms of pre-construction. How do you see the market in future for pre-construction? Do you still think, I know at this time the need is there, it's evident, the product is there, like I said, the construction is happening. Do you think we're still going to have this need for pre-construction in the near future at this time?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, particularly when the airport expansion, finally takes place, that will be something that's obviously going to continue to attract more visitors to the islands. And I think that one of the great things about here is that we live in an open society, right? We don't all sit living behind gates all the time. And so I think that people feel confident that maybe their first visit here might be in a resort, and then after that they go, okay, well, I'm going to go and rent an Airbnb or a villa or a house because I really feel comfortable while I'm here. I think the more interesting future development, and obviously a lot of what we've talked about is investment properties. 'Cause that's what while we sell real estate, like I see myself, as I know you do as well, an investment advisor for people is just the asset we advise on is real estate. I think the government are doing their best to try and keep up with the needs of the domestic housing market, and I think that the private sector is at such a stage that it's driving faster than government can keep up to it. But there are a lot of developments in more sturdy, economical, prefabricated, pre-engineered buildings that are being constructed elsewhere. The Molo Hotel Group, which is obviously the Kimpton, the Intercontinental, they have a pre-engineered or a modular system that they're using to build their hotels. I think that historically, that has not been a direction in which government or planning have really wanted to bring on. And I understand the concerns that you would get things that would be subpar, particularly when we're living in the hurricane belt.
That's the most important thing.
But I think that it is something that we're going to have to consider because the cost of construction does not look like it's going down. And the people who live here deserve to have an opportunity to own homes as well. So it's not just the investment sector, which is the majority of what we talk about, but I'm very conscious that other people who are living here deserve to have an opportunity as well. And I think there are ways in which we can start giving more consideration to opportunities that are going to allow us to alleviate the pressure that the residential housing market finds itself in right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, like you said, we have to, like planning department has to revalue some of the materials that allow it for building construction to be able to make construction more affordable on the island. And that's why, again, back to the retreat again, when I saw the price point at which it came up, was excited because there are persons who would be able to afford that product in that price range. So tell me, any last words for anyone who's looking to buy pre-construction or may have doubts about pre-construction? Leave those last words with us today.
Sure. I mean, I would think that the most important thing is that you find a good advisor.
Yes.
Vertic is amazing. I really appreciate you having me on the show. I'm a big fan. So it's nice to actually be on it.
Not to cut you off, but I think we're all a team. Like we started off by talking about being a part of the Real Estate Association. I think all of the agents are very unique in their own way, but we act as a team. And I always say the persons on this show is not about promoting Vernica. It's about promoting the product and giving people the understanding of it. And so it's a pleasure to have you on this show.
Thank you.
But go ahead.
But yeah, it's you find an advisor who's going to put your interests first. Because it is a complicated process and it's a very important one.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter whether you're someone buying residentially or you're someone from abroad who's trying to understand how the system here works. Your real estate agent is the first person who you're likely going to talk to, and it's important that you have someone who's able to guide you through that process so that you can find, one, that they will ask you the right questions, two, they'll listen to what you're saying, so that they can guide you to the right property that suits your needs. But I think I love working in pre-construction. I love the process of going through it. It comes with challenges like everything does, but it's incredibly fulfilling. And I think to be a part of something that's new is always exciting.
Well, again, thank you so much for being a part of the show. It was a pleasure. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us today. And definitely, I want to say to the listening audience, please continue to share this podcast with others who you know will be interested in finding out more about pre-construction and also real estate on the whole. And I think this is a great opportunity for persons who have been, looking in the market for a period of time and not sure, when to, how long you want to continue looking. Perhaps pre-construction is something you want to consider in the meantime. So until next time, I will say to you, stay safe and remain blessed. Have a very great evening. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate and not that of Keller Williams TCI or any of its affiliates. Any action you take upon the information provided on this show is strictly at your own risk, and Let's Talk TCI Real Estate guests or hosts will not be liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of the material. I am not an investment advisor, broker, or dealer.